Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Freedom Friday podcast. This is Braden Freeman. I'm recording to you from my studio, aka my bedroom. Today is Thursday. It is 10:58 p.m. Um, yeah, so this episode is going to be titled "The History of Money," but it's going to be a little different. So every day of the week, I get up early and I go over um, recent changes in the economy. Just a little update for myself, just to see what's going on. So, headlines for this week: the United States signs a cooling labor market, weaker job growth, and concerns about how the trade tariff policies may bite into investment and growth. Markets are increasingly betting on rate cuts, but the timing and magnitude are uncertain. In the last 4 months of 2024, the U.S. economy generated 868,000 new jobs. Then, in the first 4 months of 2025, the U.S. economy generated 491,000 new jobs. We learned that in the most recent 4 months of 2025, the economy generated only 107,000 new jobs. The latest employment report, which was released at the time of writing, revealed a labor market that is slowing, raising questions about economic growth in the second half of 2025. While many growth indicators are soft, consumers are still spending. Retail sales data for August show that modest gains, including in the category excluding auto and gas overall. CPI inflation year over year reached about 2.9% in August, up from July core inflation, which was steady about 3.1%. U.S. consumer prices increased by the most in 7 months in August amid higher costs for housing and food. But a surge in first-time applications for jobless benefits last week kept the Federal Reserve on track to cut interest rates next Wednesday. The unemployment rate is steady at 4.3%. Long-term unemployment is increasing. About 1.9 million Americans have been jobless for 27 plus weeks. Bitcoin is currently trading around $116,000. Today, I think it topped at 117.8 or point 0.9, somewhere around there. Historically, Bitcoin tends to form monthly lows in the first 10 days of a month. The September low is likely already in, which was 107,000, which was really around August 31st through September the 3rd, somewhere around there. Also, Sharon Williams temporarily suspends 401k matches. That'll be interesting. America faces biggest increase in health insurance costs in 15 years, with premiums expected to rise 6.5%. China proposes rule changes to ease gold import and exports. That's also interesting. Probably is going to be that's probably going to be a good run for Bitcoin. Feds cut interest rates by 25 basis point after disappointing job growth. All right, that's the headlines I have for
So
today.
today I want to dive into something that we all use every day, but we rarely stop and think about, which is money, right? So I want to revolve it around a few questions. Where did it come from? Why has it changed so much throughout history? And could Bitcoin or something like that really be where we're headed? So to begin, I want to talk about where money came from. So long before coins or paper bills, people relied on barter, right? So picture this: a farmer with a sack of grain needs new shoes, right? So he goes to a shoemaker and offers grains for shoes. The only problem is that if the shoemaker doesn't need grain, then maybe he needs firewood instead, right? This is what economists call the double coincidence of wants, right? Both sides needs exactly what the other has, right? So one wants the shoes, one wants the grain, the other one wants firewood, right? So they all have to find a way that they can trade on the same level to where it'll be equal to each other. So to solve this, societies turns to commodity money, things like shells in the Pacific Islands, or salt in ancient Rome, or even cattle in the Mesopotamia. So these were widely accepted, but gold and silver eventually rose above the rest. Why? Um, because gold is scarce, it's durable, it's easy to divide, right? So when we talked about a few weeks ago the three ways that we measure the salability of goods and money, we talked about scale, space, and time. So scales being easily able to quantize into bigger or smaller amounts is an example of how gold was able to be easy to divide. So during this time, once kings and empires start minting coins, trust skyrocketed. So, for example, a Roman soldier could be paid in gold coins that were accepted across the empire. This kind of consistency fueled trade and expansion. So next we have the paper money. So at the time, people were trading gold and silver, but the only problem is gold is heavy. So imagine having to travel across continents with wagons full of coins. That's where paper money came in. In China, as far back as the Tang Dynasty, merchants began using paper notes as receipts for deposited coins. Fast forward to Europe, banks start issuing notes backed by the gold reserve. You could redeem the note for actual gold or silver. For a while, that worked until it didn't. Governments soon realized, why not just declare the paper money as a currency itself, as money of its own. So that's where fiat currency rose. Money that had value because the government says it does, not because people trusted it, right? So instead of having a certain amount of pounds per amount of gold they had, they said, why not we just have pounds, and we can tell you, we can base how much the pounds are worth. What can you buy with this pound of money? Um, so in the U.S., the dollar was tied into gold until 1971, where President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold. Overnight, money became something new, paper-backed only by faith in the United States. That movement gave governments more flexibility, but it also opened the door to problems like inflation. So when we think about what was going on in the current time, we had Vietnam War. Well, the dollar was trading to gold at $35 per pound of gold. Cool. So during the time period, you could not have more dollars into circulation than gold you had in storage. Well, the only problem is that hinders the amount of war that you can fund. Well, during the time, the U.S. was heavily funding Vietnam War. And so countries started to realize, hey, we have more U.S. dollars in circulation than the amount of gold that the U.S. has. So what ended up happening, nations like France start sending their warships back to the U.S. to collect their gold because they didn't want to have dollars anymore. And soon other nations start to follow behind them, to where President Nixon was forced to take the dollar off of the gold reserve, right? So think about Weimar Germany in the 1920s. Inflation got so bad that people carried wheelbarrows full of banknotes just to buy bread. Like, paper money had lost all of its meaning, right? So the next stage we had was the digital era. Now fast forward to today. Money isn't even paper anymore. It's digital. Like, yes, we still have US dollars in circulation, but most of the money right now, most of the transactions are solely digital. Your paycheck, right? It may just be numbers in your bank account or your debit card, Venmo, PayPal. All of it runs on databases, ledgers, and networks that keep tracks of who owes what to who. It's fast and efficient and global, but it also means centralization, right? Banks can freeze your accounts. Governments can block transactions. Every dollar in the system exists because someone, usually a central bank, created it. So we went to the point where we traded $35 per pound of gold we had to now that we can just print fiat currency, US dollars, to where the government is able to depict and tell you what those dollars are worth. What can you buy with those dollars? So now we can just heavily print dollars, right? And it exists because they printed it. So now the banks own all of these dollars and they can do whatever they want with them. And so in 2008, after the financial crisis shook and trust with banks and governments, someone, it could be a person or a group still unknown, named Satoshi Nakamoto, published a white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So this was different because no government issued it. No central banks could print more of it, right? There's no CEO, there's no e-board, there's no board of trustees. And it comes at a supply cap, which is capped at 21 million coins. But that's also divisible into 100 million Satoshis. So 100 million Satoshis will eventually equal one Bitcoin. So transactions were verified by cryptography. So a lot of people come up with the misconception that Bitcoin was the first crypto, which it was not. Bitcoin was the first crypto that worked because of its scarcity, right? So transactions being verified by cryptography is not trust the middleman. So there's no banking, there's no financial institution, there's nobody to freeze your account, there's nobody to um, make more of what you have, right? There's nobody that's able to inflate your money. So of course, Bitcoin has its own challenges. It's similar to digital gold, like gold. It is scarce, like digital money, and it's easy to transfer, but it's the first asset that's actually decentralized, right? And like I said, it does have challenges with price swings and questions about regulation and the complexity of managing it, um, which has all been worked on as the system updates itself. But I think that it forces us to ask ourselves if money has changed so many times before from barter, uh, which is trading a shoe for rice, right? Gold, paper, fiat, digital. Why not again, right? So, if money has always evolved, why do we always assume that the dollar bill is permanent? Why do we um, surround ourselves with the idea of dollar bills, and having dollar bills is having money, or having dollar bills is having wealth, right? Picture this in Rome, right? 2,000 years ago, you had Roman coins in your hand. 200 years ago, you had gold in your pocket. You have a debit card today in your wallet, and maybe tomorrow you might have a Bitcoin wallet on your phone. We don't know, but the idea that money isn't permanent, right? It keeps changing. It keeps evolving. We need to understand why it keeps evolving, why it keeps changing. Um, when we talk about Bitcoin, right? Peer-to-peer transactions of a cash system, right? To where that I can transfer money to you, you can transfer money to the next person, and it's not regulated by anybody. Nobody would know except for the people that made those transactions, right? So people ask sometimes. I might get the question at why is Bitcoin so valuable? What's so important about Bitcoin? How is it helpful, meaningful? Um, Try walking through the airport with $100,000 of cash in a bag and see how well that goes. Or better yet, try walking through an airport with $100,000 in gold. See how that goes. Maybe try wiring somebody $100,000 and see how many phone calls you get in the next 2 seconds. Right? All these are cases that are based around the fact that we don't we don't own our money, or we don't control our money like we think we do, right? There's a government, there's banks, people that regulate our money. They want to know where our money's going, where we're getting our money from. If I walk through the airport with any of those necessities, right? Um, I would get flagged down immediately, because now the government wants to know, where did I get that money from? Where am I taking that money? What am I doing with that money? With Bitcoin, I could have an exponential amount of money on a hard wallet. Nobody would know how much money I had on a hard wallet except for me, and I can go wherever I want. I could take it wherever I please, right? So when we talked about the three ways that we measure the sellability of goods and money and hardness, right? We talked about scale, space, and time. So scales with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is capped at a 20 million supply, right? That's a scarce amount. Eventually, Bitcoin will run out, which I will explain that in a minute. But it's divisible into 100 million satoshis, right? So
And the ideals of space and time when it comes to space, right? Bitcoin is the most easily transportable money that we have, right? If I wanted to take Bitcoin wherever I wanted to, it's a digital asset, right? Meaning that it's on cyberspace. It's in cyberspace. Um, if I had a hard wallet, which I do have my own hard wallet, right? I could self custody my Bitcoin onto my hard wallet, which basically it transformed my Bitcoin off of an exchange app and puts it into a series of 12 to 24 words, right? You can pick 12 or 24 words, whichever one you want. I can self custody my Bitcoin, and if I have those 12 to 24 words memorized, I can go anywhere in the globe and get a hard wallet and pull up my Bitcoin, pull up my money, right? we talk about time, right? Bitcoin, and this is going to be a crazy statement that I make, and it's going to make sense, but you just have to listen. Bitcoin is the one way that you actually live forever, right? When we talk about living, everybody comes to Earth with a certain amount of days that they're going to live, right? Meaning that everybody only has a certain amount of energy that they can put out in their lifetime. So if money is something that I exchange my time and energy for, right? I shouldn't be losing time and energy. I should be getting more. If I'm exchanging my time and energy for money, I should be able to use that money to create more time and energy. So to translate it, if I'm working, right, a fixed a fixed job, I have a fixed salary, a fixed amount of hours I work, 40 hours a week, I have a fixed salary cap, meaning I can only make a certain amount of money in the span of a year, right? Whatever money I make, I should be able to grow that money to be able to grow that purchasing power. I shouldn't be losing purchasing power. I shouldn't be losing money. The more I work shouldn't be the longer I work. The more I work should be the less time that I work, right? So when I mean by living forever, I mean that Bitcoin is on a system that cannot be hacked, right? It's never been hacked before. It never can be. If you read the white paper, it will show you the probability of being hacked is like less than 0.00001%. So if I'm exchanging my time and energy for money, right, and I'm using it in the form of Bitcoin, which doesn't have an owner, doesn't have a CEO, isn't regulated by any government, isn't controlled by anybody, nobody can tamper with it, right? And it's a fixed asset, that asset is always going to be around. I can pass it down to my kids and their kids, right? I can pass my time and energy to the next generations that I have, right? So they're living off of my time and energy. That's what I mean by live forever. If I was to store my money in the US dollar, in the past 10 years, the US dollar has lost 36% of its purchasing power. Meaning, if I had $100 today, um, 30, 15, 10, 15 years from now, it would be worth roughly around $50 or $60. I'm losing my purchasing power. I'm losing my time and energy. But Bitcoin is a way that I can store my time and energy. So that's how it's relevant to the scale of time, being able to hold my time and energy over however long as I own it, as long as my generations own it, it will always be there. My time and energy will always be there, right? So when we're talking about Bitcoin, right, just to give a breakdown of what it is. So in short term, because I don't want to blow anybody's mind away, um, Bitcoin is a money. It's a hard money. It was published in 08, 09, right? And so the way it works is that everything around Bitcoin is centered around a proof of work, right? So we have people present day that talks about, oh, crypto this, crypto that, XRP, Ethereum, Doge, all these other coins. Well, um, out of all of those, Bitcoin, like I said, is the only actual money. When we think about money, right? Um, Ethereum, for example, if Ethereum was a money when it was created, it was pre-mined for one. Money isn't pre-mined, right? That's like creating dollar bills. That's pre-mining. For two, 70% of the Ethereum supply was kept by the Ethereum network. XRP, when it was mined, 100 million of the coins was kept by the ledger, right? If we have money, or we want to consider something money, there's no reason that it should be pre-mined and that majority of it is kept by the owners, right? I feel like this is a scam. I feel like it's taking you out of your money. And both of those cryptos are based off a proof of stake, not a proof of work. A proof of work is basically where all the transactions that are made are verified on the blockchain by nodes. So the way Bitcoin works is uh, original block, the Genesis block, back in 0809 was first published, right? Bitcoin is a reward, right? Bitcoin is something that you receive from what we call mining, right? So in order to obtain Bitcoin, you have to mine it off of a digital network, similar to the same way that you mine gold. So if I wanted to mine gold, it's going to cost me to mine gold because I have to be able to have a team that searches for caves that obtain gold. I need a team that's gonna mine the gold out of the cave. I need a team that's gonna transport the gold back to me where I'm selling it from. And now I need a team that's gonna um, watch over the cave to make sure that nobody else tries to steal my landmark. Bitcoin is mined similarly, so it's mined on the blockchain through nodes, basically cross-checking and referencing transactions, right? All of this costs, right? In order to be able to mine, you have to have a computer with a high functioning graphic card. Once you have that, you have to have your computer on to let it run. So basically, the mining is solving algebraic problems. It's running. Bitcoin is math. That's why Bitcoin is superior, and that is more logical because it's math. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5 or 6 or 7. It will always equal 4, right? So you have your mining up and running. So originally there was a Genesis block. So the first reward was 50 blocks per Bitcoin. Well, if I keep giving out 50 Bitcoin per block, eventually I'm going to run out of the 21 million cap supply. So they have something that's called a Bitcoin halving, which Satoshi created to where every 4 years the the supply, I call it a reduction in supply. The supply is cut in half to where the first 4 years that Bitcoin was on the blockchain, every block that you mine, which you have to receive blocks to be able to mine them. Every block that you mine, you have to find the blocks to be able to mine them. Your computer does it. But every block that you mine, you receive 50 Bitcoin to where in 2012, now I can only receive half of the price in Bitcoin. I mean, half of the amount of Bitcoin. So basically, if I'm mining a cave of gold and I'm getting 50 pounds of gold, right? I'm getting 50 pounds of gold consistently per week, and I'm taking it back to where I sell the gold at. Well, eventually, what if I started only mining 25 pounds of gold, right? And I'm taking it back to where I'm selling it. I still have the same amount of workers. I still have to have people that mine the gold. I still have to have people that watch the cave, people that transport it. I still need all these people for my gold to work, for me to get gold, for me to be able to sell it. But now I'm only getting half of the gold. Well, now I need to sell the gold for a higher price because I still have to pay my workers. If I promise them a certain amount that I'm going to pay them, I still need to be able to pay my workers. So that's going to force me to raise the price of gold because why? Gold is becoming scarce. Same way with Bitcoin. So when we talk about the Bitcoin having a reduction in supply, um, in the Genesis block where Bitcoin was trading around 15 to 18 cents, correct? Y'all ever seen that meme they post? It's every year it's a certain date. I think it's in the summer. They post a meme where this guy once traded 10,000 Bitcoin for two uh, pizza boxes that aged really well. Which I mean, that's also a contradicting argument because when Bitcoin was first published, the goal was to get more people and companies to recognize it as a legal tender and to be able to exchange it. So I don't blame him for selling it for those two pieces because that was the goal. But that I don't know, it aged really well considering what the price is. But back to what I was saying. Um, in the Genesis block, Bitcoin was trading around 15, 18 cents per Bitcoin, which is 50 Bitcoin per block. We had the first halving um, to where Bitcoin went from 50 Bitcoin per block to 25. So the price went from 12 cents to 18 cents to $12, right? That was in 2012. The second halving, which was in 2016, 25 Bitcoin cut in half, another reduction in supply. We went from $12 to 680, right? That was in 2016. 2020, another halving, cut in supply. We went from 680 to $7,300, reduction in supply. Next halving from 2020 to 2024, which was last April, we went from $7,300 to $64,000. So every time that I have to cut, we have a halving, and I have to cut the amount of reward that we receive. It's a reduction in supply. Historically, Bitcoin 10x's. So over the course of 4 years, Bitcoin's 10x. The past 4 years, every 4 years, Bitcoin has historically 10x, right? Also, if we look at the number charts, Bitcoin adds a digit to the price at every halving, right? We went from $12 to 680 to 7,300 to 64,000. It's a digit added to the price, right? So if that was a continuous trend, which I think it will be, because it's a fixed amount, it's scarce, right? It's math. 2 plus 2 equals 4. It will always equal 4. It will never equal 5 or 6. I say 2028 that the Bitcoin price is a 6-digit number, right? Only problem is 2025 and Bitcoin is already a 6-digit number. It's sitting at 117 today, $117,000, because Bitcoin is an overachiever. So if I was to be more realistic, I say that by 2028, Bitcoin price might be something crazy. It could be around 500,000. Like, realistically, I think that it could be around there, right? And so, yeah, like I said, we have a reduction in supply, which is the halving every 4 years. It's similar to the way of, if I'm mining gold, and over time I'm only receiving half the gold. I have to go find more gold. That's inflation, in the idea that a reduction in supply forces everything up. If the demand is there, which Bitcoin demand is higher than its supply, yeah, is demand higher than supply is always going to force the price up. That's where I was talking about the high stock to low flow ratio. But that's going to be it for today. Next time I'll probably dive deeper, and I'll have charts. Actually, I want to show charts and all these things I'm talking about. I'm gonna have charts and stuff of Bitcoin, its properties, and really dive deeper into it. I just wanted to, when I do these videos, I don't want to tell you everything, because if I was to tell you everything, you wouldn't appreciate it. I just like to give ideas and create thoughts for people to become thinkers, to where, hey, I heard this before. Let me go see what it's about. I want to create ideas for people to go be able to dig deeper and solve these problems, and learn about these things on their own. I don't want you to just sit here and listen to me. I want you to go do the work. I want you to go see, like, hey, what is this about? The same way that we get into these relationships and we go ask all our friends about these people, I want you guys to go look up different resources, go look up different sources about what I'm talking about, so you can learn from yourself. But that's going to be it for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what y'all think. I read all the comments. They don't hurt my feelings, but I read them just because I like reading comments. If you have any questions or anything, comment section. Anything you need, put in the comment section. That's it for today.